For more on the inauguration of US President Joe Biden, I'm joined in studio by our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena, and via Skype, we're joined by analyst Mpho Tsedu, who's joining us from Johannesburg. Let's start off with Sophie Mokoena, who joins us on the line, or rather, who joins us in studio. Ms. Sophie, let's start off here. What does this moment represent for the world, first of all?
I think it represents a time and era where you find a country trying to undo the damage. You know that in terms of the 4 years of President Donald Trump, or the now former President Donald Trump, a huge damage was done to brand United States of America, internally and externally. Internally, the divisions, instability in terms of politics, security, and racism. Externally, a country that was inward-looking, America first, and of course, the country that was not cooperating at the G7, G20, United Nations, and many other multilateral organizations, looking at the WHO as well, where they announced to pull out from the WHO. Therefore, he has to undo the damage. It reminds me of Madiba having to do or undo the damage that was caused by the apartheid government.
Mm-hmm. And Mpho Tsedu also joining us on via Skype. Mpho, good evening and welcome to you. Earlier on, I was listening to an analyst who said that now that Ms. Sophie Mokoena has mentioned the issue of former President Nelson Mandela, is what's very important during a time of crisis is how a leader articulates himself, and also thinking about the crisis that America face. It is a crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic, but also a crisis of what has been undone over the past 4 years and having to unite the Americans.
Well, correct. And thank you very much for the invitation, Aldrin, and greetings to Sophie there. Well, ourselves, obviously, as the bunch that's interested more in the foreign policy and international relations department, we couldn't help it but note that President Biden's speech was actually very silent on foreign policy. However, as Sophie has indicated, there are some issues which he's going to really grapple with. The buttered relations with China, the relations with Russia, the Iran issues, North Korea, and Israel matters, where obviously the late Donald Trump had already moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. You have now a president of the U.S. who is a sort of a liberal in a way, who believes in two-state solutions. How they're going to really navigate around those issues is going to be interesting. But also of interest to me, Audrey, is how are we going to, or how is the Biden administration going to deal with the issues around AGOA and issues of trade with Africa? Because this, to me, looks like a continuation of Obama administration.
Okay, Ms. Sophie, your take on that, considering that you have, number one, we speak about WHO. Joe Biden has indicated that they will be going back to the WHO. They will be reinstating their membership of the WHO. But also certain decisions that have been taken in line with foreign policy. Some may argue, when you speak about, for instance, the immigration policy and how Trump had decided that certain countries, Muslim countries, will be restricted income, the people will be restricted from traveling into the United States?
Well, of course, Joe Biden will have to find a way to ensure that issues that are not of interest to the Americans, but the globe in general, are able to give way to issues that are of priority to the world, but also to the Americans. And therefore, we saw him signing 17 documents that are aimed at addressing all those issues, particularly when you look at the executive, some of the orders that he has signed is to bring back America to the World Health Organization, but also to look at bringing back America to the climate change agreement. And therefore, he is going to work very hard to ensure that he is able to ensure that America again is able to be counted as a world leader amongst world leaders. But unfortunately, to do that, it is going to take time. As Mpho has indicated that there are a lot of decisions that Donald Trump took, and to undo those decisions is going to be very difficult. But America is America, Aldrin, and America will not change that much. America is America. It is all about the Americans. Of course, it depends on the administration. When it is the Republicans, it gets too inward-looking. But when it's the Democrats, they try to reach out. But at the end of the day, they will always put America first.
Well, earlier on my radio show, we're speaking to some of our listeners, and the argument that they made, Ms. Sophie, was that at least with Donald Trump's presidency, you didn't really see so much interference from his administration in the domestic affairs of foreign countries.
Well, of course, I don't know whether that was not interfering in the domestic affairs of other countries, or it was a question of a leader who had no experience of international affairs, who was inward-looking, who didn't care about what was happening outside the United States of America. Yes, he didn't declare war with anyone, but look what happened in Iran last year, where the top general was killed. And he instituted directive orders for the general to be killed. And therefore, I don't understand when people are saying he was not interfering with affairs of other countries. He did. Look at how he attacked China constantly. And also him trying to use Russia as part of his weapon to attack other countries. The damage he caused at the G7, at the G20, even the NATO. Africa to him was just that, you'd recall the name he used, and therefore I don't think he was the best president in terms of foreign affairs and relations with Africa.
So it may be that he didn't declare any war on any country. However, though, the implications of the decisions that he has taken has had an impact on the domestic affairs of certain countries.
Yes, indeed. Look at COVID-19. The United States of America was supposed to be at the forefront, assisting. And you know that world leaders tend to listen to the leader of the United States of America. Today we are struggling to ensure that all countries deliver on their commitment on COVAX. But I can tell you, you had Joe Biden saying this week they will return to the WHO. And they are going to return to the WHO with a hefty pledge. And you will see other countries delivering on their commitment. And therefore, that's the United States of America for you. And therefore, when it's not there, some people tend to take a back seat because the US is not there. Yes, you may talk about attacks, but I don't think that America, in terms of security approach externally, did change. Not at all.
Okay, Mpho, I was looking at the developments that happened in Uganda and also the decision that was taken by the Ugandan government not to grant the American observers accreditation. I can't remember, only about 14 people were granted accreditation, but then the American embassy decided that they won't be observing the elections because they won't have sufficient staff members to be able to declare the elections free and fair. Then the Ugandan government came out and said they were suspicious of the ambassador. And I wonder what that means about what the Ugandan government thinks about the Americans and whether at all that will have an impact on what the African Union would think about the Americans.
Well, Uganda is not alone in that line of thought. Zimbabwe, as you would remember, they always express their views around the diplomats from the US. So anybody who is not going to be an ally of a despotic regime that suppresses some of the most basic principles of democracy and human rights, will definitely have concerns with the presence of an American observer, so to say. But I don't think, Aldrin, Africa is going to, as a bloc. I've always argued in the past that Africa does not really act as a bloc in many instances. America violates a lot of international protocols all over the world, but Africans are the first to keep on maintaining this diplomatic relations with the USA, based on the obviously on the muscle of their economy. So African leaders are not that strong to can really take a position against the US. In fact, it is the US that can take decisions. And perhaps just to quickly jump back to what you were saying earlier around America's involvement in other people's affairs internationally, they have. I mean, there's a country in Southern America where they were supporting a coup and a president who was not elected. So we know how they roll all over the world. They've always involved themselves in other people's affairs. But what is going to be interesting for me, Aldrin, is how is Africa going to take advantage of what we already know is going to be a presidency that is warm towards their cause, both, and if we can actually domesticate our argument and take it down to South Africa, both Joe Biden and his deputy vice president are known to have been supporters of the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. Is South Africa going to try and tap into, I don't want to call it emotional blackmail, but to say, hey, here we are the same people that you were supporting. Vice President Harris was part of the anti-apartheid demonstrations. She was arrested for protesting against apartheid in the US with South African activists. Joe Biden himself, his video, it was making rounds all over. So are we going to see a South Africa that goes and says, hey, look, this is how far we've gone, although it may not be far, please come back. This is the South Africa which you helped to actually bring about.
Well, we'll come back and have that conversation. And some people may argue, listening into this conversation, that there's Mpho Tsedu actually saying that South Africa will be going to the United States with a begging bowl. That's one thing that we don't want, I think, as a country. But also all the confidence that was put in the former president, Barack Obama, and what happened in Libya. The continent is still reeling from that decision. That conversation just after this.